Moving forward, now we're going to add ourselves a sun to this scene so that way we can see the sun spinning around. So we know that the sun's going to want to be on top of anything that's below it. So in the case of the airplane, you might want the airplane in front of it, but you want it to make sure it's shortly after the airplane, or shortly behind the airplane, I should say. So I'm going to click on the word takeoff, which is just below airplane. Click on inserting a new symbol. Double click on that new layer that's been created for you, and we're going to call this one our sun layer. Okay? And likewise, when the last time we create a layer, you'll see in the far left side at frame 1, there's going to be the empty circle, which is known as a blank keyframe, allowing us the opportunity to add in the sun to that particular layer. If we look in the library, we do actually have a sun here, and notice the icon next to the sun is also letting us know that this is of a graphic or a symbol graphic type. So we're going to drag the sun to frame 1 of the sun layer, and we're going to put it over here in the far left corner. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, just so the airplane and it don't collide. The next thing that we're going to point out about this particular sun is we can have it spin, which is pretty cool. Now you'll notice that right now, if I turn on my selection arrow and select the sun on the sun layer, you'll see the choices here for the symboled object are simply the same as they were for some of our other examples, such as the snowflakes and the snowman and other chapters. In the case of this is where your tint and your alpha are located. But what we want this to do is to spin around. And if you choose to do the looping right here, it's not going to give you the properties that you're looking for, unfortunately. So let me reiterate to you, if you're going to have the sun rotate around itself, you have to actually click on the sun itself, and then down here in the actual layers, right click and choose Create Motion Tween. The motion tween is again the one that turns blue, and you can make your choices along the way what's going to happen. So we're going to stay here at frame 1, and you'll see over here in the property inspector, now things look very different than they did a little bit ago, because what it's recording for us is what's going to happen during the duration of this motion tween that we're going to set it up for. So when you hover over rotate times, if you set this to say 2 or 3, that's a nice small amount, and we want the sun to move in a counterclockwise fashion, so we're going to change this direction to CCW, and we don't need to select Orient Path because we are not moving it along any path. Okay, so if we press the Enter key, you'll see that it now is spinning for us. Pretty neat. And again, in order for us to be able to have that sun spinning, number 1, it has to be of a symbol object, and number 2, it's on its own layer, and number 3, that layer has a motion tween set to it. Last thing to point out about this particular layer here, at frame 1 of the sun layer, it again has that black dot identifying that some object has been added to it, and at the end of the 30 frames you'll notice that there's a diamond there, and the diamond is letting us know that there's been a change of some sort. What is the change? Well, it was 360-degree revolutions 3 times, and that's going to terminate at frame 30. There's no reason to key this at frame 15 for it to get a spin and a half in there. It'll just slow down the process, and we really want Flash to handle as much of the tweening process as it possibly can. The next thing we're going to do is add in yet another layer, and this one's going to be called the bird. Okay, so on the bird layer, we're going to go into our library, and the bird is going to be located at frame 1 of the bird layer over here on the left-hand side. Here's our bird. Okay, it's hanging kind of low there. And the bird is going to move around the airplane to the far right side. Okay, and we want to have a little bit more control pattern as to how it's going to go. It's not just going to go straight up or just on a curve. We want to create what's called a motion path. So what I'm going to do now is underneath bird, insert yet another layer, and it's going to be a guided path. Okay. At frame 1 of the guided path layer, we're going to use the pencil tool, And at the bottom of this pencil tool, I'm going to make sure that my drawing object mode is turned off. And in addition, my pencil mode, I want to make sure I've got it set to ink or smooth, so that way the bird doesn't jig-jag its way across the screen. So either one, smooth or ink, will be just fine. So basically, as I said, I want the bird to start over here on the far left, and then it's going to zigzag around through here, diverting around the actual airplane itself. So using a sticky mouse, that's what kind of happens. No big deal. So now what we want to do is set up, we want to move this guided layer above the bird layer. So I'm going to click and drag on guided layer and drag it above bird. Okay. And I'm going to set the guided path layer, right click on it. So select it and then right click on it and choose guide. And right now it has nothing to really guide, but we're going to set this bird to go through a motion path itself, so that way it can move across the screen. So, or a classic tween, I'm sorry. So we're going to click at frame 30 of the bird layer, and we're going to insert ourselves a keyframe. So right click and choose Insert Keyframe. Keyframe basically is saying let's use our old pattern that we used to use before there existed a motion tween. So we're going to use a classic tween, and we're going to grab the bird at frame 30 and drag it over to the ending. Now you'll notice inside the bird there's that little black circle. It's trying really hard to snap to this line, so let it do just that. Let it snap to it. And at frame 1 we have to go back and make sure it too is snapped to the beginning of our line. So once it does, that circle will turn black and it will be snapped to it. And the last thing we want to do is right click on top of that bird layer over in the keyframe section and choose Insert or Create Classic Tween. And then we're going to click on the bird layer. Let me redo that again. I'm going to click on the bird layer and drag, and you'll see that this little black line will appear, and it's going to snap up underneath that guided path. Okay? And when it does so, the guided path kind of gives you this little dot thing here, and then the bird is a child of it. It's kind of a parent-child relationship at this time. And when I press the Enter key, you can see your bird following along with that path. It's a multi-step process. If you miss anything along the way, make sure you watch that whole portion once again. Very important to understand that the guided layer is above the bird layer. And there you go. Make sure that the bird layer is below there. And on the guided layer, make sure when you right click on there, you've chosen guide in order for it to work properly. Take care.